Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Anthony Vitiello, who's VP of Sales and Marketing at UltraShipTMS. And today we're going to talk about critical considerations when selecting a transportation management system. Even though transportation management systems have been around, for decades, there's still many companies out there that haven't implemented one, and they're just starting out to, evaluate the different solutions and different providers out there in the marketplace. So what are some important considerations that they should take into account? How should they factor in pricing and deployment options in their choice? And are there any capabilities companies ought to be looking at beyond the basics? Well, those are some of the key questions we're going to address in today's episode. And it's great to welcome Anthony back on the program to share his insights and advice on this topic. So Anthony, welcome back.
Adrian, it's fantastic to be back with you again. These episodes of ours are always some of the high points of my time serving here at UltraShipTMS. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. I always enjoy having these conversations. Of course, to a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is TMS. A topic that I've been kind of looking at and researching for over 20 years now. And with our companies looking to implement a TMS for the first time, or they're looking to implement the solution, replace an existing solution. Sometimes the hardest part for them is knowing where or how to begin, the whole process. So, what are some important considerations or questions that companies should, take into account as they prepare to embark on this journey?
That's a great question, and it gets at the core of what folks tasked with TMS selection have to concern themselves with. I always like to say, if you put 4 TMS salesmen in a room and you ask them this question, you're guaranteed to get at least 6 answers, right? But seriously, there's plenty of important questions that need to be addressed across a fairly broad array of categories. Things like functionality, data security, usability, integration readiness, of course, price, and the list is long, and it goes on and on. But before you get to any of these questions, and superseding them all is a much more critical question. And one that, if it is improperly considered, or even worse, avoided altogether, leads almost invariably to lackluster results. And in the worst case scenarios, to those dreaded failed implementations that, you hear these horror stories. It's no good. But, like so many other things in this life, and not to sound too much like a philosopher here, to effectively address external problems or challenges, one must first look within, right? The reality is, look, if an organization is seeking a solution, it's really critical that they first come to some really firm grasp and understanding about the problems and business challenges that they're, seeking a solution, to mitigate and ameliorate. And no matter how powerful a solution a company might choose to engage, it's not gonna, if it's not gonna align properly with the challenges that they face, it's not gonna be very effective. So, what we advocate for strenuously from the earliest engagements that we have with prospective customers here at UltraShip is for the prospect to define how it sees its needs and its challenges on a continuum between control on one side, right, and convenience on the other side. And here's what I mean by that. Some organizations seek to exert a much more fulsome control over their logistics operation. And this inherently, results in greater visibility into the operational data that supports their operations, and gives them more hands-on control over decision-making, whether it's in areas like rate management, carrier performance, spot market performance, accessorial management, fleet and equipment utilization, and a host of other metrics. Obviously, in order to achieve this, a shipper must not only have technology that delivers visibility, but they will also need to have on their staff some operational resources that have wherewithal to interpret the data, that have the understanding of what questions should be asked, and most importantly, the bandwidth on a day-to-day basis to address the outputs of what they uncover throughout that process. Now, these resources, they also need to have, beyond their abilities and understanding of transportation logistics, a baseline comfort level with the technological systems and processes that they're going to need to successfully manage a very active hands-on approach to managing shipping processes. In my experience, organizations that have less depth of experience in both of these dual competencies, transportation experience and technology and data mining, and this is something that's more common among the SMB sort of segment of the market. There just isn't as much budget for retaining higher levels of experienced resources in transportation, choosing a solution where some of the control and visibility is traded off for convenience might be more appropriate for a company like that. And this is why, there are so many outfits out there, TMS outfits, that are offered tech solutions. Well, they're not really TMS outfits. Back up. They're basic tech solutions that are provided by third-party logistics companies, for example. There are also some that are built by smaller technology companies who partner with brokerage houses, right? These models, they provide connectivity for quick, simple tendering automation, tracking, and kind of other basic TMS functionality. But more in-depth processes like performance management, lead time and tendering analytics, and most importantly, rate visibility in these models, are not managed by the shipper. Instead, those functions are handled by the third-party logistics company or the brokerage partner that's involved. Now, it goes without saying that these types of metrics, carrier performance, rate information, are not metrics that a 3PL or a broker has much incentive to necessarily share with their shipper customer. So in these models, the shipper trades off a modicum of control in exchange for the convenience of having, these organizations to lean on. The shipper does get some level of automation for their logistics processes, and they can do so with a somewhat smaller staff, but they're trading off that full visibility piece and the control that comes along with owning their own data and leveraging that data to improve rate compliance against benchmarks, improve lead times and scheduling, hold their carriers to standards for performance and compliance, and a host of other key performance indicators.
You brought up a lot of great, points there, Anthony. I love, that first point, in terms of, taking a step back and really asking that question in terms of what is it, what's the business problem or the business opportunity, particularly around transportation, that we're trying to accomplish here, before we even get into the specifics of the technology. So, I think that's a great, advice, because a lot of times, you can go headfirst into any kind of technology implementation. But if you haven't defined, very clearly, what the business problem or the opportunity is, it's very difficult then to measure success. It's very difficult then to get buy-in across the organization in terms of why you're doing this and so forth. So I think that's a great example. That's a great point there. The other one is great too. You talked about a little bit about the trade-off between, control and, and convenience. And I think that, the fact that, particularly from a control standpoint, that it's more than just the technology, right? You really need to invest in the people aspect of it and have folks internally that understand transportation management, are comfortable or can become power users of the TMS to really drive those levels of business value and operational performance that you talked about. I think that's another critical aspect that's important that I think a lot of companies overlook when they're looking at TMS. And to your point, a lot of companies say, you know what, we don't have those resources internally. We don't look to invest in that area. We may not view it as a core competency, and that's where kind of that more convenience model that you talked about, is a better fit. Compared to 20 years ago when I first started, researching, TMS, there are a lot more, there are a lot more choices today regarding deployment options and pricing models. How does a shipper decide which deployment option or pricing model is best for them? What factors should they consider?
Well, a shipper will have to weigh these benefits of more active management and with the absolute control and visibility that delivers against the benefits of a model that alleviates that day-to-day burden of active management in exchange, though, for a little bit less visibility and control. And with the higher control levels that are delivered by a pure shipper's TMS, the shipper will have to have stronger internal resources, like you said, to manage those processes and technologies. But the potential for overall savings doing it that way is significantly higher, and we've really proven that, with the customers we've worked with. All that reporting and analytics and transparency into rates and the performance drivers give this shipper the powerful tools they're going to need to drill into the root causes of performance, make corrective actions to mitigate lagging performance, have better, stronger, more effective carrier management, and improve their access to capacity, which sometimes it can be challenging. And all of this sort of supports a more forward-leaning aspect of supply chain management. Getting to things like demand planning activities and other predictive analytics, and it increases supply chain velocity while simultaneously reducing cost and waste. And if they do it right, if they execute right, the savings that they're going to get with the control model are going to far outpace what looks like additional cost at the outset, but it's really compared to the savings potential, nominal cost that they're paying to maintain full control over their transportation process. Okay, and with respect to the pricing question, the recent proliferation of TMS entrants into the market that offer low cost and in some cases no cost solutions compared to the enterprise level solutions that are still a more significant monthly subscription. There's a lot to understand about this, but the first thing to keep in mind is that there is a big misconception that the reason why we're seeing so many lower cost or freeware sort of solutions is because cloud computing has brought the overall cost of using enterprise software down. But as I recently wrote in an article published by Talking Logistics there, the article was called "Who Really Pays for Low Cost or No Cost TMS?" And it kind of gets to the heart of the differences between the vast gulf in price between the different ends of the spectrum. And look, you can deploy a solution that costs nothing or very little on the front end, but will ultimately wind up costing you a lot more than those that have the higher seeming subscription cost. First off, many times a freemium offering, as it's referred to, is used by a company to attract customers, and then very soon after signing the contract, the shipper using it realizes that in order to access some of the more powerful and useful functionality in that solution, they have to pay more to activate it. Kind of like those free apps you get on your phone, where it's a cool app and you download it for free, but when you go and try and use it, obviously, the best nuggets are going to require some form of payment. But that's not all of them. Many other freemium providers are able to deliver their solutions to shippers for next to nothing because they're making the margin elsewhere. For example, in the article I wrote for you, I said, in many cases, these solutions are subsidized by carriers and brokers, which are these solution providers' primary customers. There was an article recently by senior tech editor Eric Johnson over at Journal of Commerce, where he said in some cases up to 90% of the customers on these freemium solutions are brokers and 3PLs. So these relationships, with the shippers, help these freemium providers build out their carrier network, and then they can feed the carriers and brokers the valuable shipper data that's captured in the free versions of those software tools. There are other low-cost solutions, not the freemium model so much, but these are what Eric Johnson refers to as brokers in TMS clothing. And these sort of broker-fielded solutions make their money on the freight moves, not on the software licensing. And about this, Johnson says that the 3PLs or brokers brand themselves as a TMS, but as a licensed broker, they derive their revenue not from TMS sales, but from the transactional fees on the freight that they book through their technology on their marketplace. Adding to that, Chris Cunane, the ARC advisory analyst, agrees in large part based on what I've read of his. One thing he wrote, he said, in these solutions, route guide is populated with carriers that the broker has a relationship with, and the broker makes their money based on the spread between what the shippers pay for the shipment and what the broker pays the carrier. Now, between the extra activations that a shipper might need to pay for with a nominally free solution, and the savings that they're missing from rate and performance perspective, the shippers aren't really getting a free TMS. And for the money, they probably have been better off, from the outset going with a more robust and full visibility and control focused offering. That said, I highly recommend that you go over to talkinglogistics.com and for more details on the question of who pays. I wrote it up in the article there, and it's worth checking out.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Thanks for pointing people to the commentary there. Yeah, I mean, certainly, a lot more diversity today in pricing models and deployment options. And I think, one of the key takeaways for me is, you really have to understand or ask the right questions in terms of understanding, what each solution provides at the price point being offered, and understanding, the overall costs, if you will, from a total cost of ownership, standpoint, for each of the models, because, as you stated, I mean, there's a lot of differences between the different pricing models and the different deployment options, that go along, with them. Of course, ultimately we have to start talking about functionality, and ultimately, you're going to pick a solution that's going to meet your functional requirements. That's got to be important too, as part of the process. I mean, when it comes to functionality, is there something beyond the basics that shippers ought to look for?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, on one hand, we're seeing a much greater sort of parity these days with respect to the functionality that's available across different platforms. One thing I took away from a recent attendance earlier this year in the spring at an annual symposium produced by one of the top industry analyst organizations out in Phoenix was that TMS adoption amongst the largest enterprise shippers is nearing 100%. It's the high 90s. That means those shippers are already pretty well informed about all the standard and expected features and functions that should be included in a contemporary TMS offering. To a large degree, these top players in the space, they all, in the TMS space, all enjoy very similar capabilities in terms of features and functionality. So there's not much left to differentiate one platform from another in the top tier of providers when it comes to functionality. Where the differentiation points lie today is in the ability of a TMS solution to integrate with other solutions that shippers are going to use in their supply chain tech stack. And this is a topic I wrote about in my most recent contribution to the venerable Talking Logistics online site there. That article was titled, "Don't Wait to Start Supply Chain Digitization." Have I mentioned how awesome a resource Talking Logistics is for today's busy supply chain management professional? Anyway, in that piece, I note that the next step in the evolution of supply chain logistics is connecting critical operational data that's captured and stored in your TMS with other supply chain applications in your tech stack, both upstream and downstream. Things like your ERP systems, your warehouse management systems, your yard management tools, fleet management tools, and other systems that are going to feed information in and out of your TMS. And the holy grail here is the ability to support more and more effective operations, staffing, scheduling, manufacturing and production, delivery and fulfillment, and settlement across the supply chain by digitizing the data and effectively passing it across the multiple technology solutions in use by your organization. So when considering a TMS partner, or really any supply chain technology partner for that matter, a critical consideration is the extent to which a provider can deliver the integration capabilities needed to support modern supply chain digitization. Behind me here is the logo for our tool. This is an infographic. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see it here on the recording, but it's available at our website, UltraShipTMS.com. And what it shows is the technology that we've built that illustrates, what a digitization-ready TMS is able to accept by way of information from all those different systems that I mentioned across different data formats, whether it's XML via API or EDI or iDocs, SMS, CSV, flat files, whatever it is. It accepts all the information, order information, shipment information, scheduling, status updates, invoicing and settlement information transmitted from all the different relevant supply chain solutions, and it parses that information, makes it easy to manipulate in the TMS, and then when it has to be flowed back out downstream to other supply chain platforms, it sends it back out in its native format. So this Nucleus digital supply chain hub that we offer, makes easy uptake for processing in TMS, plan, execute, and settle transportation logistics. And I'd say, that the speed at which supply chain tech is evolving these days, shippers seeking a new TMS should focus really on the provider's ability to deliver this type of functionality. Because, like I said at the beginning of this rather long-winded answer, it's, the meat and potatoes features and functionality are pretty much become industry standard no matter which tool you use.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Anthony. I mean, I know that, and I've said this before as well, a transportation management system doesn't operate in isolation, right? In fact, it is probably one of the enterprise systems out there that need to integrate with so many different applications, like you talked about, WMS, TMS, YMS, ERP systems, online ordering systems, and a lot of other, even external systems. And now even with e-commerce, sometimes you're seeing, integrations there as well. And that's one of those areas where I think a lot of companies, they focus so much on the features and functions of the TMS itself, meaning, can it do optimization? Can it, convert LTLs into TLs? And those are all important things, but they overlook sometimes the integration aspect of it. And that's where a lot of failed implementations or delays happen with implementations and rollouts, is that companies really didn't take those integration considerations into account early on as they were evaluating and selecting partners to truly understand what the requirements are so that they can make an informed decision there. So I think, understanding, the integration requirements, where, what kind of data do you need to put into the TMS, and what kind of data needs to come out of the TMS, and in what formats and what systems do you need to integrate with. Those are all questions and considerations that, every shipper ought to be thinking about and really, clearly define upfront, as you talked about, because that is a critical, success factor there. Well, Anthony, we're running short on time here, so I'm just going to get to my last, question here, as a way to wrap up. I mean, so let's say you've selected the right TMS for your organization based on everything we've talked about. I mean, what advice would you give to shippers to, regarding implementing it, to make sure that, they have a successful implementation?
Well, I think the most important thing is to ensure that you select a provider that's right size for you, right? A provider that's going to be able to deliver the level of training, support, knowledge base that you can lean on as a shipper, particularly during the critical implementation phase, and even after solution go live, as your business evolves and grows and may change, different processes emerge, different processes sunset. You really want to spend time beyond considerations of cost, functionality, features, and even integration capabilities to the culture of the organization that you're going to be partnering with, because you're not just buying a technology, you're buying the company that produces it and the company that supports it, and ultimately it's about the relationship that you can build. What you want is an organization that's going to act as an extension of your existing transportation and logistics department. Not going to be looking at you as just another sort of support burden or that sort of thing. So again, this is more of the art than the science of it. The science being the technology piece of it. Taking the time to do your due diligence about the organization that you're dealing with, and their track record for success, what other shippers are saying, about them in the marketplace, because it really is a relationship. It's not a transactional sort of sale, at least not the way we perceive it here at UltraShip. We really sort of regard our customers as, members of our organization, and this is why our policy is to assign dedicated resources to each account that remain involved in that account for the duration of the term. That way you're on a first name basis with the people that you call in to talk to for trainings and support and for change requests and all these things. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You don't have to explain to the people what your processes are, or how you do things, because they've been with you there from the beginning. That's an important question to ask when you're going out to to RFI, RFPQ. Beyond the functional, beyond the the financial and all those things, is how do you approach change management? How do you approach process management and growth and evolution? You really want to find an organization that's going to be there for you for the long haul. That's what I would recommend.
That's great advice. And I always go back to one of my favorite, you talked about, some of the guest commentaries you submitted for Talking Logistics. Well, there was one that we published from our friend Kate Vitasek at the University of Tennessee. And she wrote about, why we need to redefine RFP, and not talk about RFP as a request for proposal, but RFP as a request for partner, and really thinking about it from a partnership, standpoint. And I think I'm hearing a lot of things today, more and more from shippers, that to your point, they're looking for a partner, because there is success. You can measure. There's two ways to look at success. There's the success of the implementation at go live, and then there's the ongoing success after the implementation, right? How do you continue to deliver value, deliver results after that go live? Because we all know that transportation networks change, the transportation market change, your business changes, and having a partner there that can help you, navigate those changes on an ongoing basis and help you as the shipper deliver business value on an ongoing basis is critically important. So I think that advice is, spot on.
Couldn't agree more. The implementation is 3 to 12 weeks. The rest of the contract is 3 to 5 years. That's when, you really have to, have chosen wisely.
Great. Well, Anthony, as always, we could probably talk all day about this subject matter, and we always just manage to scratch the surface, but you provided some great food for thought and advice. So thank you for being with us on the program today.
Thanks, as always, for having me, Adrian. Like I said, it's a highlight for me.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the UltraShipTMS website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Anthony, you can post it there, and I'm sure he'll be more than respond via that medium. So again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.